Good afternoon. Welcome to the Gainline Wales Online's live Rugby World Cup show. We're here every day throughout the next 6 weeks, bringing you all the latest news and debate from Japan. We want you to help us set the agenda, so please do get your comments and questions coming in. Simon Thomas, who's with me, will try and get round to answering quite a few towards the end. Simon, we'll start with the big issue that's blown up at the World Cup. Reece Hodge, we did touch on it yesterday, the Australian star, banned for 3 weeks. Lots of comments on the back of that for that high tackle. Sir Clive Woodward saying it's the wrong decision, it was never a red card. What's your thoughts on this? Because it's such a divisive thing, isn't it?
I've called it the Brexit of rugby, John. It's dividing opinion like nothing else. And I think the most astonishing thing that's come out of the whole episode is what we've learned today was that Hodge is saying in the disciplinary hearing that he wasn't fully aware of World Rugby's, tackle framework, a high tackle framework.
Do you believe that? Surely.
Well, it's astonishing. And he says that he didn't have kind of education on it. You would have thought, with everything that's been put in place, that there would have been something that would have been made crystal clear to players by the coaches. And it just goes to show, really, doesn't it, that the education process still has a long way to go. And it probably isn't helped, that process, when you have such a high-profile figure as Sir Clive Woodward, former World Cup winning England coach, coming out and saying that it shouldn't have been a red card. When you look at the framework and you tick all the boxes, it's a clear step-by-step guide, you tick those boxes, and that was a red card offence. It was shoulder contact to the head, high tackle, the arms being wrapped is kind of irrelevant, it was a high tackle, dangerous tackle, to the head, red card.
The Australian media are certainly not very happy about the decision. They say it sets a precedent for the rest of the World Cup.
Good.
Do we expect a raft of red cards now as a result?
Tim Horan said a similar thing, the former Wallaby centre. He said precedent's been set, messages been laid out to the players. Well, I'm glad, because that's the whole point, isn't it? This needs to be made clear that habits have to change. We thought we'd got to this place and that this World Cup was going to be, evidence presented that it was working, that people knew where we were. But you've got players not knowing the regulation, you've got pundits not understanding it, but you can hardly blame them when the one group of players who should know the framework inside out, which is the match officials, even they aren't implementing it correctly. We've had a situation where 3 high tackles have not received red cards and have now resulted in sightings. One's been dealt with Hodge, 2 Samoans as well. Citing means it's viewed by the commissioner as a red card. So, the mixed messages out there from everybody are just awful, and it's a real issue, and you probably will see a backlash in a way now with red cards being given, but if that's what it takes, John.
Would we be saying this if it was an Alan Wynne-Jones situation or a Wales player?
I'd hope we would. I mean, if you look back to the Sam Warburton ones, we were an example, isn't it? 8 years ago, everyone was saying, terrible. But when you look at it, it wasn't consistent through the tournament, but it was right for the law. I don't know. Let's hope we don't get there, isn't it? And let's hope that the Welsh players have certainly got the message and the education process is certainly put in place for them.
Okay, Simon, thanks for that. Now, while me and Simon have been working very hard on the Rugby World Cup here in Cardiff, our colleague Matthew Southcombe has been enjoying a little 6-week holiday out in Japan. I spoke to him earlier on this morning just to get the latest from both camps. Here's what he had to say. Good afternoon, Matthew, or good evening, I think, where you are. You've been with the Wales camp today. Just give us a bit of an insight as to what was said in the press conference, what the general feel is about the place.
Yeah, good evening, John. I've been in the Wales camp this afternoon. The good news is on the injury front that the 2 concerns of Ken Owens and Hadley Parkes eased concerns over that. Robin McBride did. Very happy with the way the set piece had gone. They seemed quite comfortable across the board, really. I guess Georgia was a box tick from their point of view. It wasn't perhaps as polished as they might have liked, and would have perhaps wanted to score a few more tries in that second half. But all in all, they seem a very happy camp at the moment, and very sort of assured of where they are and the challenge that lies ahead of them.
Yeah, could you give us a flavour of it? Where are they staying? What's the hotel like? Where are they training? What are the facilities like out there?
Yeah, so Wales are staying right in the middle of Tokyo, not too far from my own hotel, but they could be poles apart. It's an absolutely phenomenal building where Wales are staying. It's absolutely huge. It's got like a Bentley showroom. It's got everything that you need. It's got a 10-acre garden with a waterfall in it. We were told that the players who came over to do the press conference, they're staying on one side of the hotel, and it took them 12 minutes to walk over to where the press conference was being held. So that gives you an idea of just how big the hotel is. In terms of where they're training, they're a little while away, just 10 minutes away from their hotel, still in the middle of Tokyo. They're actually training at the ground where they lost to Japan in 2013, so there's a few bad memories for a few of this squad there, but that's where they're preparing for the match. You know, obviously they don't make any shortcuts these days when it comes to facilities, so it's got everything they need there.
And I know you've been to the Australia camp as well in the past 24 hours. They're staying in a slightly different place. They're staying at Disneyland, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a little bit bizarre. They're not the only team to have stayed out there. I think the Springboks have stayed there as well so far. But yeah, it takes about an hour to get out there on the trains and the subways from the centre of Tokyo. And yeah, the last train you have to get is the Disney Resort line, and it takes you around the Disneyland theme parks here in Tokyo. And it's a bit bizarre, really. They've got all the Mickey Mouse silhouettes everywhere and all the Disney classics playing over the loudspeakers, and then eventually you get to the team hotel, which is a very nice 5-star hotel on Tokyo Bay. It's massive, and they don't seem to do things in halves out here when it comes to luxury hotels, and they've got a fantastic view of the bay and obviously Disneyland as well now. Sakopi Kepu, the prop, said that none of the players have actually been to the theme park because they're under orders to stay off their feet in between sessions, but they did say, however, you can watch the fireworks from their rooms at 9 p.m. at night, so they've been doing that.
Okay, I won't keep you too much longer. I'm sure you've got a fancy restaurant to be heading off to this evening. Team announcement obviously coming up tomorrow. Are we expecting the same team? Is that the vibe you're getting?
Yeah, I think it's very much going to be a similar side. I mean, like I said, they didn't do a lot wrong in the first game. I think the only question marks really you would have is one at loosehead prop. Now, Wyn Jones was picked for his scrummaging against Georgia. Australia present a slightly different sort of challenge, and they're going to be coming hard at the breakdown, which is one of Nicky Smith's fortes. Former Wales captain Sam Warburton compared him to Gethin Jenkins in that facet of the game not so long ago. So whether they want to go for Nicky Smith just to bring a little bit more up, I think something's just happened in the Italy game in the press room behind me. Whether they decide to go for the breakdown prowess of Nicky Smith just to shore up that area with Pocock and Michael Hooper come in, maybe something they look at. And again, there's that thing of does Ross Moriarty come into the starting side? I think they'll largely stay with the same outfit, but maybe look at changing that loose head because, like I said, it's a slightly different challenge.
Yeah. Okay, Matthew, thanks for your time. We will speak again soon. Take care.
Take care.
Interesting to hear Matt's thoughts on the team this. I mean, he thinks prop is the big decision. Maybe Nicky Smith coming in for Wyn Jones, who obviously did very well in that first game. We've actually run a bit of a poll prior to the show on that decision as well. 68% going for Wyn Jones, just 32% for Nicky Smith. What would you do there?
It's a real difficult balancing act, John, because when you look at Australia, you've got one of the best players in the world over the ball at the breakdown, David Pocock, just such a menace, immovable when he gets over the ball. And in terms of Wales's options there, Nicky Smith is really good over the ball himself, so the breakdown is going to become a crucial area. Michael Hooper there as well. You can understand why there may be sort of an inclination to go with that. But then it's a balancing act, because on the one hand you might then say, well, which is more important, the scrum or the breakdown? The Australian scrum this year in the Rugby Championship was 100%. Absolutely demolished Fiji in the scrum in their opening game. So what do you go for? Which one are you going to prioritise? To me, given the problems we've had with the scrum, now it's undermined us, I would probably stick with Wyn Jones myself to give us that platform. With Nicky Smith to come in when the game breaks up a bit more, plus the breakdown becomes even more important. But you can see why they're having the discussion, because you've got two differing strengths there with two different players.
Yeah, absolutely. A few comments then on Facebook before we go to a Q&A. Ian Humphrey says Wyn Jones, no question, he's the best. Whereas Wayne Beresford says it's a no-brainer. You've got to go with Nicky Smith. Duncan Davis says anyone who's watched the Scarlets knows that Wyn Jones is pretty damn good at the breakdown too.
Yeah, he's a good spoiler. He's good in the loose. Nicky Smith is just a level above him. In the same way, I believe that Wyn Jones at the moment is a level above Nicky in the scrummaging. So yeah, over to Mr. Gatland.
Yeah, okay, we'll try and polish off a few questions before we finish with Simon, so we'll keep your answers as brief as you can. Simon, let's start with Ian Alexander, who has asked, how do we get the best out of George North? He says he was concerned about how quiet he was in that opening game.
I think we give him the ball, because I think when he got the ball in a space, towards the end of the game, produced an excellent finish, scored a try. Wales will look better when they've played in wider channels. So let's get him onto the ball more. Maybe bring him in field into centre channels on occasions as well.
Yeah, okay. Hugh Jenkins, would you pick Navidi or Moriarty at 8 on Sunday? David Hughes asking, will Moriarty start?
I think Navidi has to start in terms of the aggression he brings in the tackle, in terms of his ability to punch above his weight as a carrier, and plus above all, an area which Wales need to tighten up on. He's one of the best in terms of the clear out to the breakdown, so he has to be in the side somewhere.
Yeah.
You could go him 6, Moriarty 8, but I think Wainwright has deserved his place on form, so I think they'll stick with Navidi at 8.
Okay, Gavin Evans, would you go with a fully fit Owen Watkin or Hadley Parks, who's got that fractured bone in his hand, that issue, although he did train today, as we've heard?
I think if Hadley Parks is in a situation where he can train, you have to make a judgment on his fitness. If they consider he's fit enough to play the game, then it has to be him starting ahead of Owen Watkin. So it's down to the medics, this one, isn't it? If he's fit, he plays.
Yeah. Okay, one away from Wales. Now, Sean says, what are the chances of Japan beating Ireland, and what about Japan v Scotland, which looks like maybe the crunch game in that group?
Ireland, I don't think they'll beat Ireland. Ireland just keep the ball all day against them physically. Scotland, well, that's going to be a tricky one. And don't forget, you've also got a situation there where the other team, the groups, I think they could be a challenge to it, So I think Japan against Scotland, that's got all the makings of potentially a home victory.
We saw that shock yesterday, obviously, with Uruguay, Fiji. Do you see any other shocks in this pool stage? What are the games that maybe could give us one, or are there none?
I think the Japan group is the one, because Scotland looks so vulnerable. They've lost 2 key players as well. They look a bit shell-shocked and rattled. So, I can see Gregor Townsend's side will be very anxious and walking on eggshells as they go into the rest of this group.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, a comment here from Matthew Nicholas on where we started, really, on the Reece Hodge thing. He says, it's crazy that Australia are complaining. Fiji should have benefited, and the game, if it was 14 men, they would have had a much better chance of winning. It would have ended differently.
It's a shame. The bottom line is these decisions should have been dealt with on the pitch by the match officials. It was, as I say, the Reece Hodge incident for me ticked the boxes in terms of a dangerous head-eye tackle, contact to the head with force. Should have been a red card. It wasn't. What we are left with now is the World Rugby having to clear up the spilled milk and deal with things retrospectively. But that then also has to happen to send out a message to the rest of the tournament. It's not great for Fiji. It doesn't really help them. They got a bad week of it, really, haven't they? But I think where we were, they had to take action to make it clear, to encourage the others, or get down with those tackles.
Just finally, then, in terms of Pool D, does that shock result yesterday, the defeat for Fiji, do you think does that change anything for Wales? Does it make life easier?
I mean, 2 things. It wasn't the Fiji first team, and their turnaround we talked about the 3 or 4 day turnarounds in this tournament, and it's clearly affected them because they put out largely a shadow side, and they've come a cropper as a result. And I think it's going to knock them focus-wise, and I don't think they'll be quite so up for it possibly when they're going against Wales, because it's been shattering blows they've had this last week, So I still think Wales will go into that with quite a lot of confidence. But of course, before that, there's a little matter of Australia.
I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot more in the coming days. But what are your thoughts now, just a few days out, just to finish off?
I think it's a really tight game. Wales beat them last time out. Australia have improved since then. Australia got a very strong scrum that worries me, and they got David Pocock, one of my favourite players in the world. But rather not, he wasn't playing. Well, he's a lovely player. I think I would edge towards Australia at the moment, but I'd love to be proved wrong.
Well, let's hope you are wrong. It has happened before.
Once or
twice. All right, thank you, Simon. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you for all your comments and questions. Remember, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, and you can keep in touch with all the latest over on Wales Online. See you next time.